world, COVID-19 lockdowns are impacting religions and traditions in many ways, including cancellation of worship services, pilgrimages, traditional celebrations, as well as cultural ceremonies. Although many churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples are offering worship through online streamings and other unique ways to worship together, many are still feeling the impact of this pandemic, which continues to disrupt normal worship. Behind me is the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception that used to hold 4 masses on any given Sunday, gathering more than 3,000 worshippers in each sermon, and about 10,000 on a special occasion, has had to close its doors due to COVID-19. On this episode of Our Voices, we take a look at how lockdowns are impacting religious communities and how clergy are using technology to keep the congregations connected, and how it is safe or not to go back to corporate worship as governments around the world are beginning to ease restrictions on religious gatherings. Hello and welcome to The Conversation. I am Auriane Itangishaka. I'm joined by my co-host Ayen Bior and Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick. Countries and territories around the world are enforcing lockdowns on various degrees due to COVID-19 pandemic. Amongst groups that are harshly affected by these measures are religious communities.
Today I'm identifying houses of worship, churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services. Some governors have deemed liquor stores and abortion clinics as essential, but have left out churches and other houses of worship. It's not right. So I'm correcting this injustice and calling houses of worship essential. Many millions of Americans embrace worship as an essential part of life. The ministers, pastors, rabbis, imams, and other faith leaders will make sure that their congregations are safe as they gather and pray.
Now we have the privilege of talking with Reverend Okure, who is the director of the African Faith Justice Network here in Washington, who's going to help us to understand the impact of these lockdowns on worship. Now, Reverend, we are sitting here at the Basilica that usually holds hundreds of thousands of people moving in and out. It's pretty empty since COVID-19. Some may call this pandemic a taste of faith, and not just for the Christian community, but for other religions as well. What do you say?
That's correct. It's a taste of faith because whether going to church on Sunday, synagogue on Saturday, or mosque on Friday, that is being prevented. However, it has forced people to go into a deeper meaning to ask themselves questions, what does my faith mean to me? And some of them we found that they are already beginning to reflect internally, knowing that God lives in me. And so we find people actually reaching out, being generous more than they normally would be, and paying particular attention to the needs of others. It is meaningful to them, not just being mechanical. So there is a positive side to it. I know that, however, the longing to be together is still there. Yeah.
And Reverend, what have you seen to be the biggest impact on the religious community from this COVID-19?
The Catholic institution, as you were talking about Mass earlier, you know, and so this staying aware, but thanks to modern electronics, like every other religious community, there have been online masses. Some priests have gone as far as collecting the photos, family photos of their members, and pinning them on the pews. And so when the celebrating Mass alone is looking at, technically speaking, the community, but they're in photos. So that's one impact. I know that some churches who were struggling, and so some church staff have seen their salary cut because of the lack of income. And you know that the church members, many of them have lost their jobs too. So it impacts their ability to contribute to supporting the institutional framework of the church.
Some may ask, is the corporate gathering, the corporate worship essential for the spiritual life of a worshiper?
It is essential, spiritual life is anchored on the community, you know, even though it's a personal journey, but it's not a journey in isolation, you know, because how do I relate with you? How do I see the image of God in you? How do I interact with the community? How do I live out my faith? God put us here together to help one another grow spiritually. Yeah.
Yes. Now we're beginning to see governments around the world easing restrictions on religious gatherings. I mean, we've heard President Donald Trump asking governors to open up the space for people to go back into worship. Are we ready? And if we do go back into worship as usual, what would worship look like?
I think on the one hand, there is apprehension on people coming together so suddenly. But on the other, people are anxious to get back. So some churches, in fact, in other countries, they have begun to let people in rather than gather 3,000. They say 300. And so you sign in. After 300, they close the door so that people can have their space. And then, so some churches have multiplied the number of services to accommodate as many as possible. We need to adjust to accommodate people who so desire to be there.
Now, on a side note, Reverend, we've seen a lot of tensions here in the U.S. concerning the death of George Floyd. We've also seen President Donald Trump come out for the first time recently after these protests have begun and was at a religious institution holding a Bible. What do you make of that?
I wish he didn't do that, because some people saw that as a political stunt. And you don't do that when people are hurting. You don't do that when tensions run high. I've seen a barrage of former military wigs come to condemn that action, including a number of religious leaders. That was just uncalled for. Rather than address the nation and try to unite it, so I think it was very insensitive. Pope Francis just said, look, racism is a sin, and it's not pro-life to be racist. Having said that, it is not just the police. Racism here is institutionalized in our political system, in our housing, in our medical system, in the legal system. So it permeates all aspects of our social, political, and even religious life. We should not try to pin this all on the police. Yes, police brutality triggered it, but the racism is not just within the police. Collectively, we have to own the blame. We have to repent for institutional racism, and especially racism against blacks in this country that goes on 400 years. Laws are made to keep people subjugated, disparity in sentencing, educational admission. We can sit here and speak for the next 2 hours. I'll still be speaking on that.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us concerning this very important topic. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, the impact of this pandemic has been felt globally. Let's take a look at how in Kenya, different religious communities have had to adjust.
Remind us before we start the mass.
At Nairobi's Don Bosco Catholic Church, worshippers are adjusting to Sunday prayers in the time of coronavirus. Holy Communion for Kenya's 11 million Catholics has been made more sanitary, and holy water is no longer considered safe.
When it is at the entrance of the church, everyone dips their hands there. We are not belittling the power and the possibility of people sanctifying themselves with holy water, but we are saying as long as it is an element where people are touching, we don't want to also scandalize those who might be weak in faith or have weak immunity, that if they touch that which has been touched by many people, they can be harmed.
It's a similar scene at Nairobi's JAMIA mosque, where the doors are only open during prayer times. Muslims make up about 10% of Kenya's population, but those more prone to coronavirus, the elderly and sick, have been asked to pray at home. And the Kenya Association of Muslim Medical Practitioners told mosques to stop ritual cleansings known as ablutions.
Ablution and toilet facilities will be shut down, will be closed down immediately, as these areas, according to the medics, have the potential of aiding the spread of the coronavirus. The faithful are thus advised to make ablution before coming to the mosque.
At Nairobi's SHRI SWAMINARAYAN Hindu temple, devotees have been urged not to come pray at all to avoid infection from large groups.
Every Sunday, we have approximately 1,500 people gathering here for the weekly prayers. And apart from that, on Fridays and Saturdays, we have assemblies for the youth, where we have 300 youth coming in. We also have various classes, language classes, music instrument classes. So the temple has been proactive and has issued a statement that all these activities whereby you find many people are gathering, all these activities has been suspended until further notice.
Instead, like much of the world in the time of coronavirus, they are going online, live streaming the services. While further spread of the virus could fully halt communions and congregational prayer, Kenya's religious leaders agree it's not the time to lose faith. Instead, they say, maintain social distance, wash your hands, and keep praying. Rashid Ronald for VOA News, Nairobi.
With you always. Let us offer each other a sign of peace.
Thanks for our colleague Rashid Ronald for that story out of Kenya. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, my co-host Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick speaks to an imam who feels that lockdowns are not effective.
I'll be speaking with him in a minute from my home. We'll be right back.
Being part of Our Voices is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them
and bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Welcome back. You're with Our Voices. It is said that Africa must find solutions tailored to Africa's unique challenges. In Liberia, Sheik Ali Krayee says closing down places of worship is pointless, since the same people meet in marketplaces in masses. He discusses this and more with my colleague Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick.
Imam, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk about whether or not places of worship should be closed down during a pandemic. You've been very vocal on the issue. Why do you believe that closing down places of worship will not help stop the spread of COVID-19?
Thank you very much for the invitation, Haiti. Yes, the coronavirus outbreak has had some impact on the Muslim community. Because of the lockdown, most of these prayers, in fact, at some point, all of these prayers had to be performed at home. So not going to the mosque has some psychological and to some extent spiritual effect on the Muslim people. And of course, in Ramadan, people usually pray in large groups. Muslims are more motivated. So it made the Ramadan a very strange experience. The positive aspect of it has been that people who usually did not have the time to pray with their families now have the time to pray with their family members.
Imam, what are some of the things that you have had to implement during this time, some of the changes you have had to make to allow people to still practice their faith and allow yourself to be able to lead, Muslims through this time?
Well, we have learned how to improve the situation with hygiene. Muslims traditionally perform ablution. We wash often. We have been following the rules of Islam, which are all in line with public hygiene. We have also learned that it is important for people who are going to worship to carry their own prayer mats. Everyone has to pray at home. We have too many people in this religion who are ignorant of the religion and who do things contrary to the teachings of the religion, but people think that those things are in fact Islamic practices. So Corona has taught us that everyone has to learn something about Islam, something enough to be able to practice their religion.
Imam, what have you learned and what do you hope people have learned about, faith, resilience and dedication during this time?
We managed to have a program in collaboration with the other Islamic leaders in the country, whereby every Friday we had Friday sermons or khutbah broadcast live on radio. And sometimes they are pre-recorded so that our people, the Muslim people, will be fed with spiritual knowledge and enlightenment and inspiration during this time of the coronavirus. Besides that, we work with health authorities to ensure that who are responsible to ensure that all the health protocols regarding preventive measures for the coronavirus are in place before any barrier, while we make sure that traditional Islamic rites are properly observed.
Now, there's a lot of talk about what a post-COVID-19 world might look like. How do you see religious practices changing? How do you see, age-old traditions changing in a post-COVID-19 world? Or do you think that things are going to return to the way they were?
We believe that this virus is here for some time. And generally, we have to learn to live with it. So it means we just have to take some measures, those kinds of measures that we have been taking in collaboration with health authorities and of course the government to continue to worship. But we realize that in fact it had become pointless to continue to close the places of worship when marketplaces and public transport services continue to operate. Because at least in the places of worship, at these places of worship, in the mosques and the churches, people can put measures in place to ensure that the virus does not spread.
Sheik Ali Krayee, thank you so much for your time.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk to Pastor Vivian Katachie in Ivory Coast about whether or not people's faith have gotten stronger or weaker because of COVID-19. But before we go there, we hit the streets of Tanzania and ask our viewers the same question. Take a look.
COVID-19 has made my faith stronger because I used to spend a lot of time thinking, so if I go out, am I going to contract corona? Or I used to think about my family, where they go, who they meet, are they going to contract corona? So I would find myself praying a lot and fearing God. I bring myself front to God and just pray, I hope I don't get this disease and I hope my family doesn't get it. And at the end of the day, we used to do prayers, a lot of prayers with my family on the phone. We would just get on a video chat and just hope and pray that we don't get the disease. So in one way or another, I'd say it did make my faith stronger.
The whole lockdown process got a person to actually take a step. There is a difference between going to church and just actually sitting down and praying. So it kind of make you think, was I just praying because I was going to church, or can I actually do this at my own space? But I also realized you can get together with your family and friends and pray together, whether through digital space or you can do it together at home. But to me personally, it's been a process. It's been an illuminating process because again, it got me to thinking: is my relationship with God at the right place? Am I doing justice about it? Am I at the right place? Am I where I'm supposed to be when it comes to issues of faith in God?
It may have made our faith stronger only if we had time to pray. Only if they had people in the house who know how to read Bible, how to read Quran, how to pray. We know that the time of lockdown, many people may have been worried too much, and their only hope was God. So the only thing they made or they do at home, it's only concentrating on how Lord may help them to cover or to recover what they are going through.
Welcome back, you with our voices. Now, my colleague Ayen Bior spoke to Vivian Katachie, senior pastor of the Dominion Chapel International in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, on her views about how her congregation, or believers in general in Africa, are holding on to their faith in God during these tough times.
The people weren't prepared. They were taken by events. There was so much surprise about such a deadly disease, and there were panic everywhere. Their hearts were filled with fear. They did not know what to do, whom to turn to and whom to talk to. There were some of them that were having a little symptom. They thought it was a deadly disease. So they decided to stay away, to stay to themselves. Some of them stay at home. They weren't even coming out. They were so afraid.
And how has the lack of resources, the uncertainty for the future, and the sickness from COVID-19 impacted your church?
It's true there's scarcity. It's true people are sick. We are seeing it. We are hearing it from the news, from the mouths of other people, from our neighbors. We are seeing people die, people being carried each day. But one thing, they believe the word of God has already been planted in them. And Matthew 24, 6 to 8 already confirms that these are the things we are going to go through in the latter days, or in the latter days. So they weren't shaky. They were unmovable because they believe at the end of the day, God will step in, which actually God has stepped in. Despite the restrictions, despite the scarcity of things, we've seen the hand of God at work in the lives of the people. Their faith has grown to the level that no matter how, they will not abandon their faith.
As a religious leader, what are you learning about what's going on around the world?
I'm learning a lot of things from what is happening globally, we are around the world. Why? Because these are prophecy being fulfilled in the scriptures. Matthew 24 is my focal point. That is, Matthew 24 verse 1 to 11 tells me these are the things that's going to happen in the last days. So what is happening now, I'm not surprised. Rather, I'm being fortified and encouraged that what I've been preaching to the people, God is accomplishing his word, and his purpose will be accomplished in the lives of his people.
Losing a loved one is hard enough, but when you lose someone from COVID-19, you can't say a final goodbye or attend their funerals due to social distancing measures. For close-kin Muslims community, including Indonesian Muslims here in the US, this means making the most of technology and praying for their loved ones afar.
Many Muslims in the U.S. are immigrants from countries such as Pakistan and Indonesia. As a religious and ethnic minority, they form tight-knit communities centered around mosques and Islamic centers. When tragedy strikes and a member of community dies from the coronavirus, such communities are hit hard. Fahmi Zubir is with the IMAM Center, a mosque established by the Indonesian diaspora in Silver Spring, Maryland.
It's difficult, we're sad, because families can't even go see their loved ones' deathbeds.
They not only feel the loss of their loved ones, but also feel the pain of not being able to offer the customary Muslim burial, which for Muslims must be done within 24 hours. This normally included bringing the body to the mosque where worshippers usually perform a congregational prayer over their loved ones to pray for their souls. Mohamed Magid is with the All Dallas Area Muslim Society Adams Center.
None of the medical officials and professionals said the funeral prayer it impact the person. The problem is that how many people can go show up for the funeral? That's the problem. If many people showed up, that's the problem, that they may pass sickness to one another because of their gathering.
Families are also unable to congregate to bury their loved ones as they had before. These restrictions apply not only for COVID-19 patients who die. Families who lose loved ones from other ailments such as heart disease cannot congregate in large numbers as part of local social distancing measures. Some states, like California, have the strictest measures to deal with funerals. Farhad Ambadar is with the Masjid At-Tohir, established by Indonesian Muslims in Los Angeles, California.
Absolutely not. No one can accompany the body. From the hospital, they take the remains directly to the cemetery. In our case, they take them to the Muslim cemeteries.
Yes. But at least there's something they can do to comfort those left behind.
We have a memorial via Zoom, so the evening after the burial, we get together and read from the Quran. We have a preacher Zoom from Indonesia, and we read together and pray for the deceased.
Muslim Indonesians are among those who have died from COVID-19. This confirmed coronavirus deaths tend to be in the epicenters of the pandemic in the states of California, New York, and New Jersey. For producer Yuni Salim in Alexandria, Virginia, I'm Valdia Baraputri, VOA.
Now, it's not just goodbye to our loved ones that has been so difficult, but happy ceremonies such as weddings, which are major parts of many cultures across the globe, have felt the blow in 2020.
An average wedding in Sudan has thousands of guests. So when my boyfriend proposed, my family and friends expected nothing less. But the coronavirus pandemic put a stop to large gatherings, including our March wedding plans. I not only had to cancel all our bookings, I also moved out of my parents' house, so as not to put them at risk from the virus. So now I'm alone and trying to figure out the next step. Some of my friends held small weddings, but as the first child of my parents to marry, they want a big celebration. We haven't decided on a date yet, as it's not possible to book any venues until the lockdown ends. But there is a strong feeling that even when restrictions are lifted, the virus will still be a threat. So we will all have to decide when and how to hold our wedding without putting those we care for in danger. COVID-19 has not only altered our daily lives, it may also force us to change our traditions, including my wedding. Neba Muhyiddin for VOA News, Khartoum.
And we're going to end it right there this week. On behalf of VOA and my colleagues Ayen Bior and Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick, I thank you all. Good day.